Hello, guys. Welcome back to the HVAC Shop Talk channel. My name is Zack Psioda. I'm the host of the HVAC Shop Talk podcast. And the guy you're looking at right now, an all-around great guy with average baseball abilities. That's irrelevant. We're going to talk about HVAC today. Here recently, I've been talking about how being an installer, HVAC-wise, can make you into a better service tech because it'll give you a leg up in particular aspects of the job. If you haven't watched that video, I think I released that one yesterday, but you could check out on our channel feed and find that one, how it's really cool to be an installer before service tech. And here's another reason why, and something else I want to talk about, that will prepare you for being a service tech. And when I tell you the story, guys, don't be upset if you're a service tech, because I know a lot of us out there have been service techs for a long time. I myself was a service tech for many, many, many years, and I know that we sweat, we crawl in attics, we go in cold areas, we work in the snow, we work in the sun, we work in the rain. So I know we go through a lot of difficult conditions. But in all my years, which are plentiful, they go back quite a ways. They're 25 years. Nobody's conditions are worse than an HVAC installer because of the longevity of a job. And you need to be prepared for this. If you're going to be an installer first, there's going to be some jobs that are horrible. And I'm going to tell you about a couple of mine just to lay the groundwork for that. And it'll actually lay the groundwork for being a good service tech because, one, it'll inspire you to get the hell out of there. And number two, it'll give you the toughness you need to kind of withstand these elements and these conditions, at least on the side of weather, environment. It may not set you up for dealing with people, but that's a whole different animal we could talk about at a different time. It will set you up to deal with some of these non-human factors a little bit better. Now, I'm thinking about a couple jobs here, and the first one I'm thinking about was actually right down the street where I grew up from about 7 years old to when I left the house and got my own place. It was one of our neighbors, and they had a really, they had one of these crawl spaces like this. I mean, really shallow. The one that you look in the hole and you go, and then you look to somebody else and go, are we changing the ductwork here? And they go, yes. And you're like, oh, why? Because the package unit and the ductwork goes under the house, and there was not a whole lot of room. It's one of them places where you can barely turn over. And in the South, especially in the South, and I know I was talking with Justin Beaver about this from the HVAC Overtime show. We were talking about describing a job by how many blocks high your crawl space was. Very common in the South because we don't have basements. You'll say, that one was 3 blocks high. The center block's 8 inches tall. So you have 24 inches, about 2 feet. So say you have 2.5 blocks, you start to grimace a little bit. Say you have 2 blocks, you start to be sad. Well, this job was a 2-block job. That means 16 inches. And I was thinner at the time, but it still wasn't good. And another bad issue, wet. It was wet. Down there, you could find a current. It was an ocean. We set up some fans, tried to air it out. And my dad said, because at the time, my dad was my boss. He says, we're going to give it a day. We're all like, yes. That's called, this is a little bit of a side story. This is what I used to call screwing over future Zack. It's when present Zack, which would be the one that was there at that job that day, was screwing over future Zack by accepting doing this job later. Because that meant he would be dry today, but he's screwing over his future self because he was going to be wet later. We wanted to dry it out a little bit. We came back the next day, and it was not dry. It was drier, but it was not dry. So we wallowed through that water and that mess. And I'm going to tell you the truth, guys. A lot of you probably hear that and go, that's not very safe. You know what? Looking back on it, it doesn't appear to be very safe. Just from an electrical standpoint, issues that might occur in an old house like that. It's a very old house. So that job lasted a few days in the mud, in the muck. It was horrible. We had a job that was in a little town called Kelly, North Carolina. Again, in the crawl space. And it was the opposite. It was like the Sahara. There was no water. It was full of sand, and every time you moved just a little bit, it kicked up so much sand and debris. It would be floating in the air. You had to use a respirator. Now, a lot of times that we probably should have used respirators, but we didn't. On this job, we had no choice, or you would have been just coughing and hacking and knocked out within a few minutes. It was just, there was debris everywhere in the air. And that's the sort of thing installers have to deal with. It's just it's a tough gig, guys. It's really a tough gig. Not all the time, but you have some real lowlights out there. And that's not even getting into the worst part, especially in the South. A lot of you guys might have different situations. A lot of you guys might have like mechanical closets. You might have basements. You might have those little half basements. I forget what they're called, where you have a crawl with a basement, you have a mechanical area in. But for us, it's either crawl space, a little bit in the closet, and then attic. And attic can be bad. I mean, I know there's a lot of guys out there, and feel free to put it in the comments. What's the hottest temperature you ever had to do a job in? Now, I know we had, on the service side, I can remember 130 or so. I know we had like a 130 to 140 Fahrenheit install. And I remember that because it was actually a bank. It wasn't a teller. It was like a bank officer from one of the banks we actually used. I actually put my money in that bank. And it was her house. And I remember we could spend about 15 or 20 minutes up there in the attic. And then once we reached that 20-minute mark, you really were getting, you were going to have an issue because you were covered in sweat. You were overheated. You start to have that feeling where, you know, if you haven't eaten all day or something like that, or maybe some of you might have, I don't know. It's hard to, high blood pressure makes you feel that way. If you have a high blood pressure spike, you get sort of lightheaded and you can't stay up there longer than like 15 or 20 minutes. It's just physically, it's dangerous. You're going to have a heat stroke. And it's so common in our industry to want to push yourself or have a boss push you. And on some of these occasions, like these attics, you got to push back. You got to say, we had to take a break. There's nothing you can do about it. And my dad was pretty good about that. He'd let us knock off early if we had to because it would be just too hot. We'd take as many breaks as we needed to. He was always really good about that because he didn't want our mom to yell at him if one of us died, basically. You know, what happened at work today? Well, Zach's dead. What did I tell you, Terry? Don't let him climb up there when it's 150 degrees. Well, how about the other ones? Are they dead too? Yep, they're all dead. I just thought I'd tell a few stories like that because I think it's stories that need to be told. It's a fair warning to installers out there that need to have that red warning light flashing in front of them. It's going to be hard sometimes. It really is, but it's great preparation for the future. And go ahead and put any stories in the comments, something that you might have gone through yourself, whether on the service side or the install side. Let me know what you think of the conversation here. And I will see you guys on the next one.